When the jack-o'-lantern imprinted t-shirts and 9-foot skeletons make their annual grand appearance, you know it's September. The temperature starts to decline over the flyover states, and the sun seems to go to bed a little earlier. Certain unnamed coffee shops break out the coveted pumpkin spice flavored syrups. By the way, pumpkin spice is mostly just cinnamon and nutmeg. Calm down, everybody. September is also the nationally designated month of recovery. Since 1989, the 9th month of the year has been crowned by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Very much like how a pink ribbon is the symbol for breast cancer awareness, recovery gets its very own designated ribbon color, and for a very odd reason. In ancient Greece, amethyst quartz was believed to have the ability to heal the body and level the mind. The word amethyst itself comes from the Greek word for not drunk. And people thought that the purple crystal could keep a person sober. They would wear it, or they would put pieces of it in their mouth when they drank. And the Romans picked up their belief and spread it across Europe, and over time it lost and gained certain aspects of this supposed supernatural rock. The only thing to seem to have survived that ancient Greek tradition is that purple is the color of sobriety. In modern times, recovery has adopted purple as its representative color, but most people have moved on to believing in a power that comes from a little higher. At the foothills of the Ozark Mountains is a sleepy little town of less than 10,000 people called Clarksville. If you pass through I-40 between Little Rock and Oklahoma, you may see a few signs calling you in for a few gas stations, a couple of hotels, and of course the local Walmart. What you won't see is that this small town in the rural center of Arkansas has quickly become the capital of recovery. In 2018, an organization called Safe Haven was founded with the mission to empower people who are trying to change their substance abuse into a productive life. Using treatment services and case management, they continue to help with a focus on women in recovery. A few years after their establishment, there was a call to help to one of the most obvious names that comes to mind when someone mentions recovery: Jimmy McGill. No, not the character from the TV series Better Call Saul. This Jimmy McGill had a tumultuous past with substances, and when he decided to become something more, he entered recovery, made friends with the man responsible for locking him up so many times, and together they convinced the governor to change the law so that a felon could take a government position, and that's how he became the first lawfully appointed director of peer recovery for the state of Arkansas. Safe Haven needed a men's division in Clarksville, which is when Jimmy moved his family, and with his wife Chelsea, they created their program Next Step Recovery's New Phase, a men's facility which now houses over 30 guys in recovery. That's a fraction of the backstory that led up to the 3rd annual Faith Recovery Conference. Jimmy McGill's call to all who seek recovery to join for a full day of speakers, motivation, music, and camaraderie. This was my second year to travel to Clarksville's junior high auditorium to witness the power of this event. As I pulled into the parking lot, I had to loop around twice just to find a space that wasn't a football yard's length from the front doors. I don't mind the walk, but I always appreciate a quick escape plan if I need it. It was immediately apparent that the love of this event was flowing out of the doors, as there was groups of men and women of all ages laughing, talking passionately, praying, and putting their arms around each other. Through the entrance, I was greeted by faces who I had met over the past few months from reporting on recovery. It was like stepping into a family barbecue. How are you? It's great to see you. The welcome was felt, and I suddenly didn't mind so much that I had to park so far out. Chelsea McGill, the founder of Next Step Recovery, was taking her usual chosen spot behind the merch table, and she lit up time and time again as people stopped by to say hi. Making my rounds through the crowd to see the other recovery services with tables, I shook hands and listened to them talk passionately about their approach. Most of them I was familiar with, but was pleased to hear about new recovery efforts such as a women's recovery ranch near Hot Springs with horses and animals that the women care for. In the auditorium, the lights were dim in the seating area, but I could hardly find a seat that wasn't being occupied. After taking my position in the back, I turned my attention to the stage where a panel of leaders in recovery talked about their experiences.
I had my first daughter when I was 21. Carly, and then I had Kaylee the next year, and I lost them when they were 5 and 6 because due to alcohol. I was real bad a real bad drunk then. And so their sister has him still to this day, you know, but I've built. It's taken me years. I'm 39 years old, and I've, you know, probably used meth most of my life, 25 years of it at least, a good portion. You know, we have a good relationship today. I see him all the time, you know, and that's what cleanliness and recovery is doing for me. I've been to prison 3 times, and the last time was I went to West Memphis, and it was only for like a SSP 60-day stay. Something changed me in that 60 days, you know, something, and I know I've never really known. I know that God loves me, you know, I do know that. But I never put him first. I never put him in any of my life growing up. Sorry, guys. But, you know, I just never did because I never had any family or anyone to guide me or anyone to show me that that's, you know, that's good. It's just good, you know. Repeat the question.
What was different this time for you to get it? Because I mean, I'm sure you've had the experience of like, oh, I'll never do this again. I want to change. Yeah, but what was different this time?
Okay. Well, I never really went, you know, and tried rehabs, you know, ever. I can't think of. I mean, I was 14 and I was forced, you know, so it wasn't. I'm not counting that. So, I ended up leaving, running away from it anyway in 2 weeks. So anyway, but so you know, I've just been in and out of jail. You know, going in and out of jail my entire life. You know, I mean, it's just basically been in and out and in and out and not having a care in the world. You know, and what's changed is that my children love me and they have been without me for years. And everyone that I love, I've pushed away. You know, everyone that has tried to help me through the years, I've pushed away because of my addiction. I couldn't get out of it, you know, I couldn't find a way out of it. And God knew. He stepped in my life and changed my whole, look where I'm sitting right now. You know, and I'm fighting him the whole way up here, just so y'all all know that I'm like, no. But, you know, so something changed in me, and I just knew, like I knew that, and I told myself, you know, the last prison and I was coming into Safe Haven, look, nobody is going to help me get anywhere I need to go. I've got to step up and woman up, you know, stop being a child, stop reckless behaving, and, you know, and so, I mean, God knew what he was doing and still does.
What changed for me was, one, I started listening to the people that were giving me these suggestions about what I needed to change. Why I couldn't get clean and sober is, you know, there's a saying that nothing changes if nothing changes. So I was, my solution was not sufficient, right? I would try to get addicted to something else, someone else. It might look good from the outside, you know, it might seem okay, but it just was not. You know, I had a God-sized hole in my heart, and I was trying to fill it with these little stupid little things that were not working. So it just would not fill that void. The only thing that would fill that void is God. And, you guys, the people in here, the people I've met at Sozo, the people I've met in AA, there's another saying that I like, is that those people I'm sorry. They're people basically they're reflections of God. They are wearing God, So I sat down, I shut up, I listened. I started listening to the advice that Brad and Bob were giving me. I started making small changes in my life, and I started to develop a routine. And the routine looks like going to meetings. For me, it's AA, because I am an alcoholic first. Alcohol was my first drug of choice. It's what led me to the other ones. So for me, it's AA. Going to church, continuing to stay connected, and just not going back to, I heard Valerie say that, you got back, you had to change scenery, basically. You couldn't get around the same old people, doing the same routine, the same things that you were doing that led you to the place that you were in. And for me, that's the key, is that I had to completely change the way I was living my life. And I found that new life, through Sozo, through the classes that we took. And none of it would have been possible without God. God led me to this. I'm still baffled that I'm here at this point in time, because there was a time where I didn't want to live either. I thought I was going to die, a drug addict. I thought I was going to die a meth addict, which I don't even understand how it happened. How did I get here? How did I end up here? This wasn't supposed to be my story. Why do I keep, putting my mother through this turmoil, through this pain, when I'm promising her, we're holding hands together, and she's crying at me, telling her that, if she could throw herself in front of a car to save my life, she would throw herself in front of a car to save my life. And I'm bawling my eyes out, promising her that Mom, I promise I'm not going to use. And then, the very next day, I'm scheming and figuring out any way possible to use. I had to remove myself from that. I had to unplug and plug into something else, and I had to fill that void. And it's God. That's what fills my void, is God, and it's everybody that I connect with. It's the stories that you guys made you guys filled my spiritual cup. That was awesome. You faced the fear. I saw you out there. I'm nervous as well. This is hard for me to do. The fact that you just poured your heart out like that's inspiring to me. That's God at work. It is. That was awesome. So I enjoy listening to you guys speak. I enjoy hearing the stories. It reminds me that, I will, to the day I die, I will always have an alcohol problem and a meth problem. I will never graduate that. So the things that I've learned through the program, through church, through Sozo, is something that is a daily practice. I get a daily reprieve from this. I'm working on it right now. When I go to sleep and wake up, I got to start all over again, and it's one day at a time. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys sharing. Just change people, places, and things.
Well, yeah, like I said, I've been to treatment centers and rehabs for years and years and years, and every single one of them that I went to was ran by doctors and people with degrees and all these studies and blah, blah, blah. But there was never another addict there running the place. And Narcotics Anonymous, there's a saying, the therapeutic value of one addict helping another addict is without parallel. And I think that is the biggest thing that was different this time, is that there was somebody else there surrounded me. There was multiple people that had lived the life, and they come out of it, and they reached down, and pulled me out of it through experience, not through studies, not through doctrines and degrees.
Right.
So for me, there's two things. One, I decided that I wanted to live. I didn't want to die. Because, for a long time after that happened with my son, I didn't think I deserved to live, let alone want to. And then so I decided when I was at ACC that I wanted to live and that I was going to do everything I could to ensure that I lived a different life. And then the next thing was I listened. I asked for help, which is a big thing for me. I'm not very good at it. I like to do it all on my own, unless it's my husband, in which case then I'm a baby and he has to do it. But other than that, but asking for help is a big deal for me. And even in the beginning of my journey now, I, almost ruined it because I didn't know how to ask for help, and I left work and left Safe Haven, and not to get high, I didn't use, but I was having a bad day, and instead of being able to go to the many people that were around me and say, hey, I need help, I just left. I clocked out, I didn't say a word to anybody, and I left. And then, 12 hours into it, I realized, well, probably 8, but I called Sarah and I said, Sarah, can I please come back? And she's like, there's going to be consequences. I'm like, I don't care, just please let me come back. I need to come home. And so, but that was a turning point. That was learning to ask for help. And so that was it for me.
Later in the day, Jimmy took the stage with a lot of lived experience, charisma, and belief in recovery.
Look, if you ain't trying to have your eternity saved and changed in here, you ain't looking for it. I done heard some die-hard testimonies today. You cannot deny the presence of God and recovery in this building. And it has been phenomenal, man. When I look around this room and I see so many recovery ministries that have been leaders in Arkansas. I look at Dots and Safe Haven, Sozo, Next Step. I could just keep going, right? I saw Renewal Ranch here earlier. Here's what I know. In this room is the proof that the has-nots can become the mascots. You can't tell me what God won't do and can't do, right? Like, I haven't seen it yet. I've heard a lot of good messages, man. I heard a lot of stuff, and Scott kicked us off this morning so amazing with sometimes the church is the stumbling block to getting people to Jesus. And it was the most amazing thing I heard this morning. And then Becky came up here with that thunder. Hey, I'm jealous of Becky Brewer because I need a book that says more than a mug shot. Thank you, sis, for doing what you do. You are an inspiration, man. The leadership panel, the testimonies, and to hear Mike Jones and Colton opening their own recovery house. Man, that's what this is about. Leaders make leaders, man. So a lot of you guys know that, I'm pretty active on social media, and I believe that God uses everything and every platform, including social media, right? Like the devil, the enemy will try to use everything for bad, and God will use it for his will, and nothing is wasted when God's in it. So I met a guy along the way who's a social media influencer, and he is very adamant about the scriptures, right? Like, this is what it says, this is what it is, and he is a gifted speaker. He's a social media influencer with about 500,000 followers, and he's very, very involved in Christian ministry on social media. He's pursuing a degree in addiction psychology. He's an overdose survivor. Only bad thing about him, he's from Louisiana. I'm teasing. I love Louisiana. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for Blake Speaks Fire.
Blake Speaks Fire is a man of average height and slight build, dressed in khaki pants and a tucked-in button-up shirt with a brown belt. From neck to toe, he could easily be mistaken for any preacher in a country church. What sets Blake apart are the tattoos that wrap around his head and face and the presence that he has on stage.
How y'all doing? Man, look at this. Woo. Man, what an honor. What an honor to be able to have so many people that survive the odds. Y'all look around. Y'all are survivors. Y'all are no longer identifying by the things that once held you down. There's people out there today that can't say that right now. But you did. First, I want to do something before we get kicked off. If you've been in addiction, I want you to stand to your feet. I was going to ask some more questions. Look like I got everybody with that. If you know somebody that died from addiction, stand to your feet. If you know somebody who is still in addiction, if you just know somebody in addiction, stand to your feet. And if you just know somebody that has been in addiction, stand to your feet. And your family, friends. I want y'all to turn and just look. That's everybody. You think addiction is a game? There ain't a person in here that it ain't affected their family, themselves, their loved ones. We all have people that have died from it. I want y'all to know how important y'all are to God, that you're standing here today saying, I no longer am bound by the chains of addiction. I have overcome that thing, and I'm here to testify today. Look, it don't matter white or black, old or young, tattooed or not, male, female, it don't matter. Addiction don't care. There ain't one better than another, one less or more, it don't care. Addiction is the only unbiased thing in this entire world. I just wanted y'all to look at each other and see that y'all have brothers and sisters, y'all have friends, y'all have people that are looking to you that you don't know, whether it's in person, on social media, that you give encouragement to. There might be somebody in this crowd that has watched you overcome the impossible, and they're following in your footsteps and you don't know it. Your lives are affecting everyone. Y'all can be seated. I just wanted to do that, man. I just wanted to show how special y'all are. I'm up here to tell y'all how special y'all are. I'm not the special one. I'm just the vessel. I'm just a vessel from God here to speak into your life. We all were born in the identity of God, being attacked by another identity that came from our circumstances around us. Each and every person in here had different circumstances, but they began to form and they began to mold. You see, addiction didn't start with dope. And we think that sometimes. But we forget that we began to be molded by the things that cause addiction from a young age. We were born with this emptiness. We were born with something that we don't know why, that we felt like we weren't quite enough. And we began to seek it. As we get a little bit older, it's through, mine was sports. I began to play sports at a young age. And I love the thrill. And sports is okay. Things are okay. Activities are okay when they're just something you do, not who you are. That's right. And innocent as it sounds, my thrill of fulfillment from something other than God, something other than the person in the mirror that God created, began at that age. I needed the most of us, and most of us addicts began the same way. We are these extreme personalities. We love big things. We love excitement. We have great things in mind. But the devil knew that. He knew that God would use those things for good. So he began to look at outside sources to fulfill you with something temporary that would fail you. And then we began to think that life is about temporary pleasures, that the next thing. And it's so innocent. Mine began as a touchdown or a home run. Mine began to make people laugh in class, the acceptance of others. It makes you feel good, these temporary pleasures. And those things are okay, but they're not identity. Those are supposed to be things added on to Jesus in your life. They're supposed to be added on to the identity that he's given you, but they're so small that we forget about them. We forget that's where our addictive personality began. We forget about that's where our temporary pleasures begin that we seek now in relationships and drugs and pleasures of any kind. The world's told you to go to this and it ran out. The world's told you to, and eventually it gets in your mind and your desires begin to fail, and therefore you look inside and say, well, I must be a failure. That's why it's so important to look to inwardly who God created you to be. It's not in a drug. It's not in a relationship. It's not even in recovery. Recovery is a fantastic thing. We love it. We need it. But that's not where your identity lies. We don't need to get into this place and stay there. Let it not be a permanent place of identity, saying this is who I am. We somehow get out of addiction and then we look back and we only look back into the place where we began to use. Like there wasn't a place long before that God said, hey, I'm over here. That's not who you are. That's something you did along the way because of a temporary pleasure that began at an early age, began by your mind, began to shape other than things than me. But let's get back into how God wanted you to be, created you to be. Let recovery be something that you're doing, not who you are.
Yeah.
That's not who you are. You were somebody before then. After youth and sports, that began the thrill of sports, the thrill of the small things, like anything else, it becomes old. It becomes unfulfilling. Because all of that's temporary. Then I began to smoke cigarettes. Then I began to smoke weed. I began to look a little bit deeper because sin takes you a little further each time. He can't come to you when you're 12 and offer you to shoot some heroin when you're 12 years old most of the time. That's scary. But if he can get you to depend on a cigarette, and you can depend on some weed, then take the pill, then snort the line, then that ain't enough. The wages of sin is death. Desire never ends. It's just a little bit at a time. And then I began to look to bigger things. And by the time you get all the way, by the time I made 13, 14, 15 years old, I was grabbed. Something that started so innocently, I began to just look for it, be fulfilled and thrilled by everything else. I know a lot of, if we fail to remember, we come out of addiction and we always just look back to here. But we fail to remember what caused that in the very first place. There was something empty there. There was some trauma there. There was some hurt there. There was some brokenness there. There was some seeking after something other than God there from the very beginning that told you that you wasn't enough. Why do I want to smoke a cigarette? What makes me at 13, 12 years old look at a little thing that smokes and put it in my lung and saying that's cool? Because there's a desire inside of me that wants to be a little bit different or more fulfilled other than what I think I am at this time. It's got to be better. They seem like little things, but they're huge because they always grow. And so that's how our life began. That's how my life began. That's how I began to get into drugs. That's how I began to get into crime. I began to, let me back you up a little bit. My father died, my biological father died when I was 10 months old. He was a drug addict and an alcoholic. And he died hitchhiking back to New Orleans to do God knows what. And that was something that my dad failed to crucify in his life. And a lot of us know what that's like, that we're dealing with things that our parents failed to crucify, so in our lives, they begin to identify. But I think I have some people here today that says, you know what, that stops here. I'm going to crucify here. There is lives of children saved in this room right here. Christy said, you want to know what, devil? Not today. Not today. I'm stopping it right here. I'm crucifying it. I'm stopping it. No longer can you keep on living through the generations of my family. Well, I took that on. And I didn't know it. You don't know at that time. You don't know the spirit never dies that's seeking after death in your family. So I began to fight things. And I began to seek that thrill that I didn't even know that my father had begun to seek, and it brought to his death. Well, something became in my mind at a young age. Well, you're going to die too, just like your dad. You're going to die just like your daddy. And so I began to accept that little at a time. I began to get fulfilled. If you think you're going to die just like somebody else, why care about living? You're going to just cope. You're going to get by. Why was I created to just die like him? And so I began to look through the lens of death as I'm walking through life. And I began to seek it unintentionally through drugs, through a needle, through gangs, through prison, through jail. We all have somewhat of a story. It may not be identical, but you can remember back to the time when something was hurting. You began to walk into things because you didn't care anymore. Because why? Only one reason. I'm going to walk out who I think I am. I'm beginning to operate in the worth that I feel like I deserve. You show me what you think your value is, I'll show you your actions that follow it. You're only going to allow somebody in your life, what, to mistreat you in it? Because what? You think that's what you deserve. Why? Because your value is low.
What Clarksville is doing could easily be the model for recovery for every state. Organizations like Next Step are taking in the people that need help, walking with them, training them, and helping them get jobs in the community, making amends with their families, and becoming the type of people that you want in your life to have your back. Ultimately, the largest takeaway from the Faith Recovery Conference speaks loudly about what people in recovery need: to hear someone say, "You're not alone." Long Term is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Ty King, and is produced in partnership with Exodus Live, American Business Engine, and the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative. You can support us by subscribing to Long Term wherever you listen to podcasts, giving us a 5-star rating, and commenting or sharing with others who could benefit from hearing this podcast. If you are in need of recovery services, there are numerous recovery resources around the United States that can help you get started and stay on track. Until next time, let's find solutions for recovery in the long term.